Hi, everybody on here, coming to you with this month's Connecting Codes video. As you know, this is where we address the energetic patterns of what's coming up in the world, things that we need to pay attention to, look out for, watch out for. For those that don't know, my book I'm the author of this book, The Code Journey, and every year I put out a new edition. So I've started work on the 2025 book. And the 2024 is out. It's not too late to get started on it by any means. You can jump over to my website if you want to check it out more, compassioncodes.com. And remember, if you like the content in this video, subscribe to the channel, like the videos, share them out if you can. I'm on multiple channels from YouTube to BitChute to Brighteon, are all places that I have the videos go up directly with this. The book addresses life skills, and it addresses the energetic patterns for just how to deal with things from a more God-centered space, from being in gentle strength, compassion, but not buying into all the lies and the baloney that's out there in things. And there are pieces and components in the book that also address world events, but it's really important for us to operate with this foresight. And when I come out with these insights, I'm actually writing them a year to year and a half in advance. So what I'm sharing with you right now, I wrote a year ago in here. So it's not like I can just say, oh, look what's happening in the news and here's where we're going, which, you have plenty of people out there that do that. That's not the way I work. I write it and then it's there. I just happen to have a gift and an ability to understand what the energetic currents are and to interpret those and to show what's happening. So I believe very strongly in foresight. If we have foresight, then we can make wise choices. If we are making wise choices, then we are not getting sucked into the lies and the deception and all of the mainstream media sources and what they're promoting and what they're out there doing, because we know they're really just paid marketing in a way for a lot of corruption in our world. It's not really about reporting the truth a lot of times. And so I do encourage you to go and do your own research on things. It doesn't matter whether it's coming from me or somebody else. Don't take anything at face value. Um, yes, you can find those sources that eventually you're relying on and you trust them and they're going to give you the truth, most of the time. And everybody has their preferences with that. But it doesn't matter whether somebody's in a truther community, whether they're mainstream media. There's a lot of stuff that is just people's perceptions or ideas or concepts being pushed. And we want to get into the real sources of things. And that means, when you're looking at the facts, go look and read at exactly what an executive order says, or, what the exact quote was. Listen to them for yourself, not in a, 10-second snippet, which doesn't really give you the full spectrum of what they've said or the context, but, listen to the actual full talk on something. And that's where you're going to start to find the truth on things. You're going to start to do it, and opening our eyes. In this world and time, we've got to set aside whether somebody belongs to a particular political party or any of that, and we need to get back to the truth and the principles and the values and the actual topics of things, and not just and again, not just these perceptions or relying on a particular party to be the right party, because they're not. You've got corrupt people on both sides. You've got good people on both sides. You've got a lot of people that talk a lot of good things on both sides, and yet what they're supporting is really dangerous and really not a favorable thing for humanity, for the earth, whatever, even if that's what they tell you it is. So you've got to really use your discernment, and I always encourage that. Please do your own research, look at a variety of different things, and again, get down to the actual research and the actual studies on things and the actual facts of things, as opposed to just, oh, this person said that, and so I'm going to believe it in there. With my work, it's really a heads up. Again, I look at energetic currents, and this gives us that opportunity to work in that foresight. So if we know that, if we understand that there are death energy patterns present. That's not a great time to be at a protest, right? If we understand that people are in a space of deliberately trying to provoke people to bring something against them, then we can understand that and approach things from a more ethical way, a more um, truthful and factual based way, instead of getting wrapped up in all these battles with them that aren't going to solve anything or go anywhere. So that's really kind of a context for some of the work that I do. And like I said, it's just a gift that I have, and I try to share that out with people so that we have that heads up and understand what's coming. And then that way we can stay on top of things and not get sucked in to all of the stuff that's being promoted out there and things. So when we start looking at March, and this is what we're doing now, we're uh, looking at the March insights, and this is being recorded on February 19th, just to also give people context, because I know some things come up between my recording date, the time that the video is actually released, and the time things happen. So just to give you a little context and things, we are going to be hearing a lot more coming up in March and April, because April a lot of times is an extension. Now, we do always have a little different variation of how things play out between April and March, but April a lot of times is an extension. So you want to keep this in mind actually for, the next couple of months coming down. And so we're going to be hearing a lot more about illness, health related problems. Uh, they're trying with this to lay the foundations for another global pandemic, is what's going on with this. And so what we want to do is we're probably going to start seeing statistics, more things that are fear-based, trying to put people in fear around that. We may see like those counters. Remember how they did that back in 2020? They counted all the time, like New York now has this many cases, and Vermont has this many cases, and California has this many cases. And it was this continual counter. And what they do, the reason they use that is because it stimulates more fear for people. It makes something seem bigger and badder than it might actually be in there. So we really want to be on guard with this, and to, again, use the discretion, use take things with a grain of salt, and look at it in comparison, because they've already been trying to lay some of these foundations, like, oh, there were 2 cases of such and such a disease came out at New York airport, and that was back in December. And then, oh, there were 3 cases of something that came out in Virginia. Well, when you look at the context of this, and these are basically flu things that they're talking about, um, and not like serious heavy duty diseases, it's not uncommon to have 2 flu cases go through the airport in New York. That's just not, that's not an uncommon thing. It's not uncommon to have 3 flu cases in Virginia around the DC area in winter. I mean, these are, so we have to be careful of what the truth is and how it's being presented to us, to create a perception in our mind that may not coincide with the truth. And that's a big thing. So we're going to see a lot of this hype start to come out, pushing the health fears. Oh my gosh, we have this disease coming out, we have that disease coming out, a case of this was reported here and a case of that was reported there. And again, a single case of something does not warrant a global pandemic. And this is what we have to be careful of. But they're going to try to push that fear to make us think, oh my God, there's 1 case there, and so now the whole world is going to have this. We got to be careful of those perceptions that are being implanted in us. So there's a lot of pushing of health fears going on. So we're going to see a lot more coming out about disease being released. Now, one of the things we also have to keep in mind is by the time the media heavily promotes it, if somebody is orchestrating a global pandemic, and again, we saw this back in 2020, it was actually released several months before it ever hit the media, right? Before they ever claimed that there was a disease going around. So like there were cases of it being released in November, for example, of 2019, but they didn't start hyping it and making it a big deal until like February or late January of 2020. Same thing is happening now again. And why, why always the election year? Ask yourself that. Is this election year? Oh, yeah, it's an election year. Why do we only have these things come up at election years? It's a reasonable question to ask in the situations. And so you got to figure if they start promoting this heavily and bringing this out in March and April and maybe May, that this has already been released in December, in January, um, preceding that. So, if something's going to go rampant, it's already there. It's already there. It's not like, there's a lot that can be done other than we need to pay attention to our health, give ourselves the nutrients that we need, the vitamin C, the sunlight, all the basic good health care, the extra rest, all of the components that keep our body healthy, as opposed to just reaching for nothing but junk food along there. And this is just common sense. When you have cold and flu season, you boost your vitamin C's. This isn't anything new, and this isn't anything that is, necessarily terrifying. So we want to stay up on that. Again, we'll probably see some tactics during this time to use illness to separate people, to divide them, to get them battling against each other. And that's a big thing, because why do they do that? Because if we are distracted in battling with each other, we're not going to see the solutions. We're not going to think practically. We're not going to pay attention to what's actually happening or the truth of situations, because we're going to be so busy trying to be right. And we've got to let that go. We've got to let go of the I'm right, you're wrong, and being in all of these battles. It's got to come back to, well, you can choose what you want to choose to handle it. I'm going to choose what I'm going to choose to handle it, because I know what's best for me. You know what's best for you. And we each have to make our own choices in the situation. But we don't want to get so distracted again in that battle with each other, like a lot of people did in 2020, that we don't actually pay attention to what's happening or what other things may be playing out, that we're not seeing because we're too busy arguing with each other. And it's not going to solve anything. Now, illness during this time also can bring about spiritual experiences. So this comes either by accepting the truth of medical conspiracies on both sides, making it worse than it seems, and then maybe minimizing it, or uh, not taking something as seriously, or making it, all about all about the big conspiracies, and behind a lot of diseases, sadly, there are a lot of conspiracies attached to them. But on the other hand, again, we got to step out of the extremes, step out of both extremes, no matter which side it is. um, we have to accept the truth of deaths playing out in things. That's definitely going to be present, and the connections between the sick um, will lead people to seek God in faith. So this is one of those positive things that, even when we have the hard stuff happening in the world, there are always these positive things that are emerging. So sadly, as people start to find the truth out, as they start to unfold the truth in things, as they start to see the connections between what's happening with people, and who is coming down sick and who isn't coming down sick, and is it regional, and is it associated with people that made certain choices or people that didn't make certain choices, or where is it laying in there? And that brings people back to truth. When the immortality sets in, when the pieces do get scary for people, on the good side, there are a lot of people that will go towards God, that will go into faith, that will go into spiritual connection in there. And what we have to be careful of, again, is this attempt to outcast nonconformers, or to the calls to attack nonconformers in things, or the need to um, isolate and quarantine people over this. So we have to be careful, because the truth with any disease is you want to isolate and quarantine those who are sick, not those who are healthy. And that is certainly one of the pieces that came out before. But again, this attempt to outcast the nonconformers, is again playing to people's desire to be accepted. It's playing to their desire to um, be right, and they believe if they're accepted that they're right, which isn't necessarily the case. And a lot of times it is not true at all. Um, it's about control. It's about who is allowing to themselves to be controlled and who is not allowing themselves to be controlled, who is seeing something that doesn't set right. And again, we have to find the balance in there, um, to honor being respectful of people, obviously. And again, it goes back to just common sense. If you're sick, you stay home. In my childhood years, if you were sick, you stayed home. You didn't go out. Of course, we have all these pressures in these days and times, right? I got to work, I got to earn a living. If I call in sick, I can't pay my bills, so on and so forth. And these sorts of things. And this, again, brings us back into faith. But we're likely to get past something a lot faster if we honor that rest and stay home when we are sick than if we go out and keep exposing ourselves and other people to more things. So these are the pieces we've got to really um, watch this. And some of the facts that came out before is the more that we have people confined, especially if they're healthy, actually the more likely they are to get sick. And the sicker if they're overly confined and they're not allowed to step out of their house onto the porch and get some sunlight, for example, they will get sicker. While those that are spending time in sun, in nature, are going to do better. They're going to be healthier, a lot of these things. And we have to think that we have a lot of EMF activity in our home, right? From most people have microwaves, they have multiple computers, multiple TV sets, phones, all of these things around their household. And those EMFs interfere with their body healing a lot of times, and if they're not getting the proper nutrition, if they're not getting the proper care, the proper rest, all of those things, um, then it's devastating. But seriously, one of the best things that we can ever go do is just go take a walk in nature, just be outside in the sun, get some of that sunlight, get some of that fresh air, get around the trees and the plants a bit, because there are physiological reactions that happen in the body that stimulate the healing processes when we do that. And walking, just like, if you compare walking to a lot of other exercises, it's one of the best physiological things you can do for your body. Whether you're talking spinal issues and neck issues and endocrine issues and all of these things, there's a physiological piece to walking that heals. So even if it's not a lot, again, we don't want to overdo it. We don't want to get ourselves sick. We need to know when to rest, when to get out. But again, even if you go and you walk around your house in the sunlight, or take one walk along the block, that can be very beneficial to getting well. You see that a lot when you're sick, that if you can get outside, all of a sudden the healing and immune responses are brought way up in the body. Now, from the 1st through the 20th of March, we want to pay attention to partnerships, and particularly we want to pay attention to those partnerships between medical industry and big pharma and world elites. So those three combinations, and again, we saw this big partnership happening in 2020, right? Because we saw the connections between the WHO and Bill Gates and the big pharma industry and the medical industry, where hospitals and doctors were being paid off for things. They were getting a lot of money for making certain diagnoses, things like that. So we want to be very careful of these partnerships that come up. We want to pay attention to who's partnering with who. And again, we see this, right? We see we're likely to see more celebrities come forward and used for peer pressure, because whoever, like a lot of youth people, we see it, right? Taylor Swift and her boyfriend, right? The football player. And, there's many others out there, but they use them because so many people look up to them. because we've been so programmed to praise celebrities, to praise that status, and to do what they say, um, to be a follower of theirs. So we've been programmed to be in this slave pattern to them. So they will use them then to put forth whatever information that they want to put out to people in there. And it's a manipulation tactic is really what it is when you come down to it. So we want to be very careful of that. And the good side of this, though, is it's probably not going to work. They can try some of these things, but it's probably not going to work for them, at least during these first 3 weeks of the month. And that is because people are not as concerned about status and titles as they once were. And the reason for this is because we've had so much exposure on false titles being issued, false status, false degrees being given, people being used as a doctor or an expert in things when they had no medical background in that area whatsoever. And that is a huge thing. So people are definitely more alert to that. So I think that it's going to be much harder for people to be played than they have been in the past on that. Illness and agendas are focused particularly on the pineal gland and the destruction of that. And that's a very interesting thing. We know in the spiritual community sees that as a big spiritual divine connection, God connection gland in the body, along with the heart. And so there's no wonder that those are the things that come under attack, because when you have some of these groups out there who are very specifically focused on genocidal components, on destroying God energy in the world, then they're going to attack anything that is connected to it. So if you have somebody that does release a disease, maybe they do, maybe they don't. I can't say exactly, but it's convenient that a lot of these diseases attack those areas, and we often find the connections there behind it. So again, you have to do your research on things, but we want to do extra care. So if we understand that this is what's under attack in the body, or what is being focused on to diminish in the body, then we can also use that wisdom and operate with the foresight to do exercises, to have food, and to do the things that will support and strengthen those aspects of our body. So if we know the pineal gland is under attack, then we can go in, we can look up, well, what foods support this pineal gland, what exercises support the pineal gland, and focus on those particular things. This is the beauty of foresight that we have, is being able to see some of these things. We're going to see a big push of using illness to gain conformity, to gain power, to gain control, and to remove freedom, choice, creativity. And any time that we go into conformity and we have our freedom and our rights and our choice removed, that directly affects the pineal gland in the body. So that's a very interesting piece to keep in mind. Isn't that interesting how those tactics specifically affect the pineal gland, which specifically affects our connection with divinity? So definitely a piece to keep in mind there. We're going to see them trying to push people into impulsiveness, acting without thinking or checking into things. And again, this is why in the spiritual processes, it's so important for us to address any addictive patterns, behaviors, or anything like that that we have, because those are often used to get us to act impulsively in there. So it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's chocolate, whether it's an emotion, whether it's a feeling, whether it's a food or whatever. And we saw this very thing used back in 2020, 2021, around that range, where they were offering, free donuts for life, or, free donuts every Monday, as long as you've got current vaccination cards, or we'll give you a free burger and fries, I think was the thing in New York. I mean, and some of these things, if you think about it from a logical mind, are so irrational. They are not logical at all. They're not coming from a rational mind. It's just appealing to that drive, again, for acceptance, for um, being part of the in crowd, for um, just again following this aspect of an addiction. Oh well, if I go to Dunkin' anyways and I do this, then I can get 1/7 of my expenses covered or something. It's just it's that strange mentality. So we want to be on the lookout of that. So if you have that impulsive energy coming up, you want to stop and step back at it and look at it over a period of time, and don't just jump into it. Don't just jump into it because everybody else is doing it. Just because everybody else is doing it doesn't mean that it's a good thing to do. It's the proverbial, if everybody else jumps over a cliff, is it really a good idea to jump over the cliff? So paying attention to that. We're also going to see those world leaders who are operating in dictatorial styles um, try to get more control. They want to control the people more during this time, the first 3 weeks of the month, and we will see that people will probably rebel a bit on that. The more that their control that's tried to be implemented on them, the more people are going to be seeking self-sufficiency out. So we could see more protest, we could see more uprisings, we can see an increase as people seek to take their power back in things. So I think here again, they can try these things, but they're going to get a lot of pushback on it. So we're going to see people getting more vocal, and that can be split, right? Because we know the paid activist out there, and I don't mean just people who want to support a good cause, but I mean the people that are seriously paid to go from whatever narrative wants to be promoted to the next narrative, to the next narrative, to the next narrative. And we could see more things coming up with them or around them. And again, we want to be careful because we do still have that death energy in the monthly energy, and so that means that accidents can happen at these things. Things can turn bad quickly, and we want to be very careful. And again, that's that reminder to act and not react on things. Take the legal action, do it appropriately. Don't just jump into a large crowd of people um, to be a part of something that, you know, may or may not be leading you or us or people down a good path. Some of these things sound good, but they're not always good when you look at the bigger details of them. From the 21st through the end of the month, so that last week and a half of the month of March, we're going to see more attempts to trigger people into reaction. And this is where we start to see those pieces play out to where, one group tries to trigger another group into reacting so that then they can, call that group extremist or call that group, unsafe or whatever they want to deem them, and then try to attack them. And we see a lot of this that goes on. We've got to be very, very careful of this. And this is where people who truly care, if you truly care about the country that you're in, if you truly care about people, you've got to be very careful of these movements because a lot of them have fake people planted in them. A lot of them have people that are working for the corruption. Again, these paid activists, these paid people in them, in the crowd, and they're dressed as the opposition, specifically to make the opposition look bad, or so that something can be blamed on that opposition, even when it has nothing to do with them. So we've got to be extremely careful during this time. Keep our guards up on this. Pay attention to these setups that are being implemented. We're going to see a lot of moral violations happen as an attempt to provoke violence. So they're going to put in our face these moral violations, these moral crimes, these, atrociousness, probably things like whatever it is, rape, sexual explicitness in public, or different things like that. I mean, certainly people have a right to their sexual life. I'm not saying that. I am just saying, we have to have some boundaries in public versus what you do in your own home. Um, Behind closed doors, things like this. We've got to have a little bit of we got to have a little bit of respect in here somewhere. And this is where we're likely to see like the FBI Patriot group coming out. They're one of the staged opposition groups that we see. We need to stay in lawful action. Again, not the reaction, not going into the attacks and the battles, but taking lawful action that is ethical and finding the correct channels to stand up for what's right in things. And if we become a supporter of the provocation that's being used, you know, if we react, we will become a supporter of that provocation. We will become a supporter of the very thing that we're trying to stand up against in there. So if we allow ourselves to become provoked, what we're doing is we're basically arming the enemy is what we're doing, because we're taking ourselves out of sound mind, we're taking ourselves out of heart space, we're taking ourselves and putting ourselves in their same pettiness that they're playing in. And that's not going to serve us, and that's not going to serve anybody else. So we can expect to see a greater amount of hypocrisy increase during this time, a greater amount of unfairness happening. So again, we're going to see a stronger play of two-tier justice systems. We're going to see a stronger play of where one group of people gets away with basically anything, and another group of people, just their existence is criminal without them doing anything. So this unfairness and this hypocrisy is going to be amped up. Now, of course, the good side of that is that exposes the people that are living that way, because they become more and more ridiculous in doing that. And it becomes more and more blatant, and then more and more people go, yeah, that's not sitting right with me. So truth and integrity brings exposure, and that's what we have to stand in. Our facts are our best weapon. Again, not reciting news sources because they're all biased, pretty much. It's getting down and citing the actual facts, not the perceptions of a study, but the actual facts of a study, and realizing that a lot of studies are skewed and bought and paid for as well. I think that's another thing we could see come out more of in these couple of months, is how studies are bought and paid for and skewed to create a certain result to support a certain narrative in there. And we see that our taxpayer funds, our money, our taxpayer money is going to support some of these studies, a lot of these studies actually, that are being used against us as weapons against us, and are not about an actual, real, true scientific study in things. So again, facts are the best weapon. And, I talked about this in my other monthly video on my regular channel that had to deal with acceptance. And we need to pull our perception out of things to get to the facts of things. And if we can stay with the facts are the pieces that can't really be contested. And the more the facts are brought out, the more that everybody can see what truly is in truth and integrity. And it doesn't matter what side of things you're on, you should want to know the truth and be in integrity with things, and have people operating in integrity with things. So now our action piece are where actions, the physical things that we're most likely to see. Well, from the 1st through the 22nd of March, we're going to see a lot of corruption, who is going to be trying to end things through force and removing choice. So what we're seeing in this situation is the corruption is saying, hey, we're done playing around and trying to be nice and convince you of things. Now we're just going to do them. We're just going to enforce them, whether you agree or don't agree, or like it or don't like it. We're just going to take charge and do it. And this starts to create some really dangerous lines in the world. Obviously, this is the things that wars are made of. These are the things that bring a lot of quick awakening out in people, harsh awakening out in people with things. And what we'll see is we'll see attempts to block during this time, attempts to block or remove resources from the non-compliant people or the people that are speaking up. And this is more, we'll also see more attacks of godly things, prayer, churches, even spiritual practices. They're even going to go after spiritual practices if they connect that spiritual practice to you staying in compassion, to you staying in connection with divinity or supporting divine presence in there. It doesn't even have to specifically be a church or religion in there. So this is all used, and then guilt. Guilt is going to be the biggest tool used for compliance. Now, again, we saw that back in 2020, right? Because guilt's a powerful tool, right? Nobody wants to hurt grandma. Nobody wants to see their family suffer. Nobody wants to be the cause of, their friend dying or any of that. So guilt becomes a very powerful tool in the human psyche with this. And so we really want to pay attention, because what happens with this is we see that pattern. The corruption gets tired of waiting. They're impatient, so they just start enforcing things. So then people stand up and they rise up and say, we're not going to take this. And then the backlash from that comes, oh, if you don't want to do what we want you to do, then we'll just shut off your bank account. We'll just shut this off. We'll just shut that off. You won't be able to do this. We're going to put a regulation in place. You can't go to work, so you can't earn a living, so you can't keep a roof over your head or feed your family or things like this. And the more extreme they get with this, the more people are going to fight back, because even those people who didn't believe before, they may believe this time. Chances are they will believe this time because they're seeing it, and that impatience always gets the corruption. They just don't have the patience to see things through. And that is, that's one of their weak points and one of our benefits in there when we look at it. And again, anything that connects us to God, to hope, to divine presence, to ethics, to morals, to freedom, to choice, is going to be under attack. So we're going to see them step up their efforts again, probably through trying to implement some sort of restrictions, trying to implement threats on people, these sorts of things. We could see, attempts to close down churches or certain things. And again, you have to ask yourself, well, why are only churches being closed down? Why are only health clubs coming under attack, and not restaurants and not other places or other businesses? If something is truly a global issue or truly a global issue, health challenge or health problem in the world, it's not going to exist only in health clubs and churches. It's going to exist everywhere. So to say these ones have to be closed down and these ones don't have to be closed down is not only a hypocrisy, not only a blatant lie, not only, showing you that there's an agenda here, but it is, it is just, it's flat out attacking anything that supports you at being healthy or being able to not be controlled. So it's something for us to definitely pay attention to. Now, from March 23rd on, the actions that we're going to see taken are going to be around upheaval and drama. So upheaval and drama is going to lead to sudden changes, unexpected turmoil. They want to keep people in as much upheaval and turmoil as possible. And again, one of the best ways that they will tend to do that is to get people arguing against each other. It keeps them very distracted. It gets people, it hits their insecurities, it hits their God complexes, it hits all of these different components that humans try to carry around with them. And so any way that they can do that is going to be what we will be seeing during that time. So again, because most people don't think clearly when they're in upheaval and drama, they don't take the time to stop, center, come into a calm space, take a deep breath and go, okay, what do we do here? And it literally just takes a few seconds to find that connection. But if they can keep people stirred up enough, they won't find it. And that's again where we hit the dangerous point. And if you've got all these narratives being pushed at you, all this false information being pushed at you, you're not thinking clearly in those situations. We will likely see weather become a big catalyst. So again, at the end of March, we're going to see some weather stuff kick up. That means you want to be prepared. Again, keep some things ready to go in your vehicle, keep things ready to go in your home. You don't have to do the massive stockpile thing necessarily. And you want to think about, well, what can I fix, eat, have that is going to have a decent shelf life that doesn't require me to use a stove, right? Because in a lot of these conditions, you may not have power, you may not have uh, running water necessarily. Hopefully you do, but you may not. So there are different conditions that, again, you want to think about what can I do that I don't have to cook, that I don't have to use electricity for, that I don't have to put in the microwave, that I don't have to do, what can I just eat straight that has a reasonable shelf life to it? And those are the things that you want to have on hand for you. With that, you might want to have some baking soda on hand, for example, because if you need to cleanse off food for any reason, or if the water is contaminated or things like that, you can use baking soda is a great option because it has a lot of factors that can help to um, cleanse things, on there. So again, think about some of those pieces ahead of time. And that's an action that you can take. Weather's likely to be a big catalyst again during this time. So we could see a pattern where you have weather manipulation that could wipe out communities or create loss of homes and security for people. And then that creates a dependency on the system or the government for survival. And ultimately, that's the end goal. That's the end goal, is how much dependency can we get? How much can we get people to be dependent on the government, on certain organizations? Because everybody wants the big savior, right? So even these organizations that aren't good or healthy for them, they want to believe they're going to be their savior in hard time. And a lot of times they aren't. And this is going to be very truth telling as well in here. And this is a big awakener where we don't want to wait for the government to swoop in and so-called rescue us. We want to just help each other out. Hey, I've got extra of this. I can help you with that. Sorry, your home was wiped out. Here's a room in our house that you can sleep in. We know you. You've been our neighbors for 20 years. So, we're not worried about you. We have to step up and do what's needed and stop saying, oh, well, I don't like who you voted for 4 years ago. Therefore, I'm not going to help you out, even though your home's wiped out and, you have nothing. We can't, we have to pay attention to this mindset that we're in and not hold all of that pettiness and things like that. We've got to step up and help who is in need and meet the needs of the moment, because this is what combats the bigger issues that are present. And we can use that to come into partnership. We can use it to come into unity. So instead of sitting there going, woe is me, woe is our community, woe is this, woe is that, for having to go through this, we want to say, look, this is our opportunity to come together. This is the opportunity to lay our differences aside and to really help each other and to really care about people as humanity, as one another, as life on this planet. And that's the bigger piece. So again, during this time, we're going to see the strong competition energy try to be implemented in here. And we're also probably going to see some aspects come about where some of the actions that are going to be taken, we'll see help and assistance go to the communities who are the most compliant to the corruption. So those who are corrupt governors, senators, people like this that are running our states, who are running our communities, we're going to see again this difference, this two-tiered sort of aspect going on where, oh, well, this community's been very compliant in implementing everything we wanted, so we're going to give them a whole bunch of money, even though they had almost no damage. And this other community who was wiped out, well, they weren't very compliant, so we're not going to help them. And I think this is going to be a huge eye opener for people. I really think that that's going to be one of those things that hits people like, what the heck is going on here? Like, like our community was totally flooded out. And you're not going to help us. But these people down here who didn't even have any flooding, you're going to drop a bunch of money in their community. It's going to be eye opening for people in this. And it's going to make people think twice. It's going to make them think twice about who's in there, who's leading them, who's running things, who's making the decisions and things. Also now on the thought, mental aspects of things, the mind influences that are going on from the 1st through the 10th. Again, a lot of power battles. So there's going to be this lot of battles of trying to create confusion in the mind. And this is done to gain more momentum in things. And this is a battle between the greedy and the Christ consciousness. So we're going to see a lot of things trying to twist our mind around about what is Christ-centered and what isn't, what is spiritual and what isn't. And you're going to see a lot of false gurus probably activated under this influence. You're going to see a lot of false teachers come up, the false prophets come forward and things, and it's going to be this money thing. And so what they're trying to start a mind battle of, well, no, if somebody's legitimate, you need to pay them a lot of money, or they're going to try to start all of this confusion in the mind about things. And there's going to be a lot of people saying, like we even see this a lot in the truther community too, where people are saying, oh, this is going to happen on this date. Intel says this, Intel says that, I say let go of that BS really, because that's what 99% of it is BS. And it's about opening up and realizing that these people, they're just trying to sell you something for their own personal profit in things. So we have to really understand, we want to really understand what truly is God, what truly is Christ consciousness, what truly is heart-centered, and not just this push of it's heart-centered because I'm benefiting from it, or watching out for that. So what is happening, much like the corruption, and of course greed and corruption go hand in hand, is the greedy are growing impatient. Those who are truly spiritual, they have a lot of patience. It's like, yeah, well, I'm not getting money this year, I'm not getting money next year, well, and then 4 or 5 years down the line, oh, look, it's finally starting to manifest, or 7 years, or however long it is. The Christ-centered consciousness, the true heart-centered divine presence consciousness is patient. It doesn't get impatient. It doesn't, yeah, we all have our moments, but this is a time where we're really going to see the greedy saying, okay, I'm done. Just like the corruption. And what's going to happen is minds can't be controlled very easily during this time. And we're going to see who can't be guilted into enabling their greed. So here again, this plays into different things. Well, you need to spend the money to do this. You need to do that. And this is all about greed. But then they use the guilt piece. And if you don't do this, you're destroying the environment. And if you don't go buy a $70,000 car, electric vehicle, you're ruining the environment. These sorts of things. And so we're really going to see those people who can't be guilted, who really cannot be bought out by greed. And we need to hold our ground on that. Again, not do that compliance thing, because this gives us control groups. It gives us natural control groups. And when I say that, I don't mean groups that are controlling each other, but it gives us two different things that we then have a way to base some scientific, actual real knowledge on. It's just like if you have one group of people who are vaccinated and one group of people who are not, you've got a control group, because you can then look and see what's happening in one group versus what's happening in the other group. And this is why they don't like people resisting what they want, because it provides a natural control group that will always show the truth. It will always bring the truth forward in things. Okay. And so we really want to take a look at that. Again, tyrants are going to become more tyrannical, and this is being done to scare people into doing what they want. And this is about greed, because if they don't get what they want, they don't get the money and the resources that are promised to them for implementing these things, for taking these steps. It's kind of like if you don't do your job and you don't show up, you don't get paycheck. It's a similar concept. So if they don't implement the tyrannical behaviors, they don't get the kickbacks from the corrupt people that are running everything. It's pretty much that simple in there. So they're going to amp up their efforts in this aspect. And fear and guilt is about the only real tools that they have. And we know that God isn't in those tools. So if we, again, don't play into that, then we can keep God, divine presence, alive in the world. And there's automatically something to show truth. There's automatically something that provides contrast to a narrative in there. And that's important. And this is part of why we need different perspectives. We need people of different viewpoints so that we can see how different things play out in here. Okay, on the soul energy, from the first through, let me back up. I missed the 11th through the end of the month on our thought, on our mental energy. So the 11th through the end of the month, again, we see that weather manipulation. So that's two core components in our monthly energy currents that are talking about weather manipulation, that are talking about big storms coming in, and storms being used as a weapon for resources, for disaster recovery. So example, that's what I was mentioning earlier, that we will see most likely disaster recovery money withheld from non-compliant communities, in large sums being given to non-disaster areas if they're compliant. So this is, again, these mind games being used to give up freedom, and devastation being used to remove freedom in there. And again, you think about it, a storm, very few people are going to question a storm, because most people do not believe there's any ability to manipulate weather, even though that technology has been available in the military since the 1950s, or maybe even earlier than that, that they've been using it, and they've been using it in war. So it's not like it hasn't been used or known about or things like that. So when we look at those components, most people don't question. And again, they're in trauma, they're in disorientation when you're dealing in storm conditions. And so they are more prone to give up their freedoms, because they're in that fear of, if I don't take this government assistance, I can't provide for my family, or different things like that. And so we really have to pay attention. And I'm not saying we shouldn't take help when we don't need it, or where we need it. But what I'm saying is that we need to be careful. And again, we're going to see these corrupt games being played out. Like, well, if you want disaster relief, then your community needs to do this, and your community needs to support our agendas, and your community, and this is a manipulation game. This is a mind game that is going on. And a strong community will stand in integrity, and they will help each other out, and they will get through it. But again, you can use this fear, because the people in power, so to say, what can they do? Well, we'll turn your power off for a few days. Well, we'll disconnect your internet for a few days. Well, we'll shut your water down for a few days. We saw some of that here. I'm not saying that it was manipulated or malevolently done, but they have the power to do that. So we will see more of the malevolence come out around that, and people will not question it when it's storm related. That's the difference. is that most people will not question it in a storm-related situation, um, versus, you know, other situations in there. So, again, we have to be careful. We have to learn how to pull together. We have to know where our resources are, all of those great things, and step into helping each other where we need it. Okay, so the soul energy from the 1st through the 11th of March, we're going to see a lot coming up trying to break hope, trying to break spirit. Again, we talked about this with the breaking with the pineal gland, things coming forward that have a direct impact on that pineal gland in there, have a direct impact on the heart issues coming up and surfacing. Again, we know that death energy is in there happening. And so if we see more deaths coming up, that's one of the ways that is going to break hope and spirit. And it's also another way to guilt people into compliance. And it doesn't mean that there's necessarily more deaths than normal happening. And again, that's where we have to really do our research, but they will be pushed in the news as if there is. And so again, we have to do that. And a lot of things can feel very dismal, when we see these attempts made, when we see rights removed, when we see confinement things happening, when we see all of these different things starting to come forward in our face in our everyday lives, this is about breaking our spirit. And this is why we have to stand strong, and we have to stop and go, well, what's the actual truth? Of what has been the truth throughout a more extended period of time, not a year, not 2 years, but what if I look at it over 20 years or 40 years or 200 years? What's the truth of this situation? Where have things gone? What's different now from 100 years ago? And realize that, again, a lot of these things are going to be foiled. So we don't want to get into those mind spirals of there is no hope. There's nothing that can be done. There absolutely is, and there always is. But to do it, we need to hold on to the hope, and we need to hold on to the spirit within us, and we need to keep nourishing divine presence or God energy in our world for that. So charm and charisma, a lot of nice words being used to get what is desired. Again, let's put the people that have the nice clean cut look up on the screen, and let's have them say, oh, I care about the environment and this and that. They may not care about it at all, but that's what they're going to tell you. Oh, well, we've got to do this to protect each other. Lots of nice words, lots of words being used of what people want to hear, because a lot of people want that hopium. And we're going to see it not just in the corruption, but in the truther community. Oh, it's okay. All this devastation doesn't mean anything because there's all these good things happening underneath the surface that you can't see. Well, most of those people are scam artists that are telling you that. Okay. Those are the people that are working off of intel. And if you understand the true intel community, they're not working necessarily with the good guys, so to say. Okay. They're part of the corruption schemes. So you got to look out. Again, these are, you can't just say, well, this is the truther community, or this is the, whatever, the democracy community, or whatever you want to call it, or say these different things are, these different groupings of people. We got to get past the nice words, and we got to find the strength to stand in the true essence of spirit throughout things. And don't fall into those victim patterns in there, because again, people are going to say whatever is necessary to get what they want. And this is no different than, predators and abusers out there that say, well, if you just let me beat you for a while, then we'll go have a nice dinner. It's really no different than that. Or I'm going to give you this. I'm going to give you this when we get home. And then they never give it to you. It's the same concept. It's absolutely the same concept that's being played out, just in a different form. The corrupt will talk all about freedom and a better life. And so what I think we're going to see activated is a lot of those people who have been sleepers, and they're going to come out like changing of parties, or they're not going to get what they want, so they're going to come in and start talking the talk of what people actually want. in there. So again, we've got to sort out this truth. Um, so they may talk about that, but that doesn't mean they're going to give it to you. Again, they're going to push probably a very utopia type of vision onto society. Well, look, if we all just comply, if you all just turn your power over to us and you give up all of your freedoms and you allow us to control everything, well, we're just going to have this beautiful world and there's not going to be any arguments or any wars or anything. And we really have to be careful of that utopia vision being produced because it probably isn't attached to anything real in there. They don't mention that it requires, again, turning over all your rights and your freedoms and your choices to do that. And even then, they're not going to give it to you. So, all's going to be gone. When they get what they want, everything's going to be gone. It's not going to be a pretty life. It's going to be dangerous. It's going to be disgusting. It's going to be filthy. It's going to be terrifying if they get everything they want. And that's not a path we want to go down. That's not a path that's going to serve humanity. It's not a path that's going to serve animals. It's not going to be a path that serves our planet. None of it, because none of it's going to be friendly to any organic life on this planet. Now, the 12th through the end of the month, here's the good side. So they're going to have only that first week and a half, basically, of the month to try to push all this fear, to try to get all this control. But by the time the 12th comes around, blocks and obstacles are going to come up for anything that is not aligned, that is not in divine alignment, that doesn't have a God center focus to it. All of these things they're going to try to put forth are going to try to be blocked. So this is why I'm saying don't let your spirit get broken in that first week and a half, because the rest of the month we're going to see everything getting blocked. So that's a really positive thing to hold on to. And it's also going to help us see what is and is not in alignment, who actually is telling the truth about things and about there being a better life and who isn't in there. The ill intent cannot be fully executed during that last part of the month. Miracles are going to come where we let spirit lead and help those that are in need. That's where the miracles are going to happen. We have to create them. We're in co-creation here with God, with divine source in this. And we create those miracles because we let spirit lead the way. If we let spirit lead the way, we are going to see some beautiful things unfold, personally, in our world, so on. So all experiences become a learning experience during this last part of the month. And we're probably going to see a lot of things coming into exposure in this last part of the month, especially if we've, where the storms are coming up in the last part of the month. Here's the other good part, right? The storms are going to come through, and yeah, there's probably going to be some devastation there, but we're also going to learn more and get exposure on things that are connected to cloud seeding, so-called green energy. We will see where people's triggers or their limits and their boundaries are. And that's going to be a good thing because, like I said, when people firsthand see who's getting support and who isn't getting support, who is devastated and not getting support and who isn't devastated and getting support, when we start to see that, that's going to push people to their limits, to their boundaries on things. And that's going to bring more support for those standing up to the corrupt and their followers. And that's going to come through more facts. So again, these facts are going to come out. Well, isn't it convenient that the flooding pieces only happen after the cloud seeding rains? That's pretty convenient. Yeah. So more of these pieces are going to come out in things, and that's going to be a good thing. So again, if you start to feel your spirit being broken a little bit during those first, the first week and a half, just hang on, don't worry. It's coming in there, and there's going to be plenty of things that are going to make your spirit thrive. And as we know, when we help people in need, when we help people who truly need it, when we join together and we help each other out in our communities, not based on their political associations, but based on the fact of who actually is in need, not based on their skin color, not based on all these things, but just who has the most devastation and the most need. And when we get back to that, our spirit soars, the spirit energy grows, the divine presence energy grows. And when that grows, it brings more and more miracles and more good fortune into our communities. So that's what I've got for the month of March. I hope this is valuable for you. I hope it's useful for you. Again, if so, share this out. Subscribe to the channel, give it a like on here. I know sometimes YouTube doesn't always allow that. I've had my challenges with YouTube, but that's okay. Do what you can. And then also, don't forget to go and pick up your book. You know, I share a small piece of information in these videos every month compared to what's in this book. And if you want a heads up day by day, month by month, year by year, this is what you want to do. And you can get that over on my website, compassioncodes.com. Go over to the goods tab, select the code journey. You'll see it on there. And I have two different sources I deal with, one for paperback, one for the ebook version, and they're both available if you want to get a feel for what's written in the book. On the ebook versions and Smashwords, you can go back and look at previous years and see the information in there, and that gives you an idea of what the content is like, what the writing is like in the book. So you don't have to be caught off guard. You can be ready, you can be prepared, you can see what's coming down the line, and you can know what's being put in motion and what isn't being put in motion, and how you can deal with that and combat that in your own life, in your own world, and how you can continue to bring forward that true peace that comes from nurturing divine source in our world. So take care, everybody. I will see you next month. And again, I just want to say a quick thanks to all those people who stepped forward and who have contributed to me being inside this winter, because it has been miracles in motion happening. It's been a very hard winter. I had some very big challenges this winter, and it has been a miracle not only for me, not only has it filled the hearts of people that were able to help me out this winter, but the people of where I have been staying, the people in my community, and seeing people step forward and do this, and literally having people from around the world come forward and get shelter, get me in shelter for the winter, cold winters here in Maine this year. And it has been an amazing process, an amazing journey, and just know that you have touched so many lives beyond my own in this process, and we have grown a lot of divine presence as a result of it. So take care, and I will see you next month coming up, and we'll see what's happening then. Bye-bye.